Acts chapter 5, verses 1 to 16. One of my least favorite chapters, sections of the whole Bible. Sort of upsetting to go through it, I suppose because it hits a note and doesn't bode well for people that are doing things that God would be displeased with. And this is what happens with these people, Ananias and Sapphira. It begins, near they tis, and a certain man, Ananias, onomati, Ananias by name, sin Sapphira, tigineki avtu, with Sapphira his wife, epolise Ketima, sold a possession. Now what the possession was, it doesn't say. He got money for it. In verse 2, K eno svisato apotis timis, and he, the husband, pilfered from the value. Sinidias K tis ginekos avtu, and his wife, having been fully conscious of it, K eninkas meros ti, having brought a certain part, paratus podas ton apostolon ethikon, put it by the feet of the apostles. In verse 3, Ipe de Petros, and Peter said, Anania, diati eplirosen o satanas tin cardian su, psevsaste se to pneuma to agion, ke nos fiasaste apotis timis to horiu, and to pilfer from the value of the place. Uki menon si emene, remaining in your possession, did it not remain? It was yours. Ke prathen en tc exousia epirke, and having been sold, it existed in your authority. Ti oti ethu enti cardia suto pragmatuto, what is it that put this thing in your heart? Uk epsevso anthropis, Allah totheo, you lied not to men, but to God. Acuum they, O Ananias, tus logus tutus, and Ananias, hearing these words, peson exepse, having fallen down, he expired, died. Ke ageneto phobos megas epipantas tus acuontas tavta, and there became great fear upon all the ones hearing these things. Pilfering is what he did, a small thing. It wasn't anything that you would today lose your life over if you lied about something, but yet this man did. And so what makes this episode so serious is that we could all fall under the same title as Ananias and Sapphira, with having a petty sin, pilfering. Pilfering is something that we probably all have done. You could be working in a restaurant and it would be okay for you to eat the leftovers, but if there was food in the refrigerator that was not for a leftover, but it was expensive, like where I worked in the hotel, there were pine nuts and they're expensive. And I would grab some pine nuts thinking, it was okay. No one knows, but God knows. So that was one form of pilfering. You could say taking extra things, like if you go into a restaurant and you grab a bunch of the sugar packages and you think it's okay for you to take. That's a form of pilfering. Groceries. I used to go into the grocery store and look for cauliflower, and I'd find the cauliflower, and it had all these big, huge stems around it. And I'm thinking, well, why am I having to pay for all these stems? They're unedible. So I'd snap them off and throw them away so the weight would be quite a bit less. Well, that's a form of pilfering. You could be working for somebody and they're paying you to do certain things, but whenever they're not around, you don't do it. You waste time. That's a form of pilfering in a way. Or you can have a time card and you can come in late and try to make it so it shows early, or write it on the card where you're fudging the time that so you get paid for time you're not there. Be a form of pilfering. Or selling used equipment as new, advertising it as new, but really it has been used. It's not new. That's a form of pilfering. Wasting time. Again, while the cat's away, the mice will play, and when the boss is gone, just not doing what you should be doing. Theft of service, another form of, I suppose, of this petty theft. My son moved up with me. I hadn't seen him for years and had a girlfriend, Sharon, and they were both, I don't know what the word would be called, living in Los Angeles. Sharon was a type of a person that wore a bikini and hung out of a used car for a TV commercial. She was very pretty. And so she and my son moved up, and they were not close to the Lord at all, not just the opposite. And when I picked her up at the airport, we came home, and she had a bag of trash, and she wanted me to pull over to a trash can, a dumpster, and throw it in there. And I told her, I said, well, that's theft of service. And they both started laughing and roaring in laughter because, that in LA, you wouldn't even think of saying something like that. And so a theft of service is, I suppose, another petty theft. Recycling things and using somebody else's trash can to throw your things in, which I do. I up 30 stairs, 85 years old. I can't get a trash can downstairs 30 stairs. So I can put them in a bag, and I go down and take them to the corner, and I put them in the trash container on the corner by the city. Been doing that quite a while. So I suppose that would be a theft of service. Another maybe would be internet piracy, where you're hooking into somebody else's internet without permission, taking the data usage for yourself. Another thing would be disobeying laws, like parking where you're not supposed to, parking in the handicap zone. And then I was thinking about a person, if they're going to obey the law, if they're out in the country, let's say like a desert, and there was nobody in sight, and the road was straight ahead, and then there's a crossroad, and it had a stop sign, and there's a crossroad, and there's nobody in sight. Well, would you stop for the stop sign, or would you just go right on through it because there's nobody around? Well, obeying the law should be doing that no matter where. You'd stop. That's ideal, but a lot of people don't. They disobey it. Stealing, if you're working someplace, I used to, when I was a young man, work in a smoking pipe shop, did repairs. I felt like, well, I'm not getting paid enough, so I take part of the money that the people paid for myself, and that's theft. Also, like somebody was like a porch pirate, that they see stuff laying on somebody's porch and they run over there and they grab it. So those would be other forms of this petty pilferings type of thing. With intellectual material, a plagiarism, you could copy somebody's speech or their writings and claim it for yourself. Or in computers, you could take the source HTML information and copy somebody else's website and make it look like yours. Or there's what you would put your name on it, changing certain things in there, but it would be taking somebody else's work. And fonts, like we have right here in the Greek font, I designed it. Somebody could copy it now very easily and use it for themselves. But I did all the work in designing it in a font application. I took a wine bottle that I saw in a store, and I had the scribe on it holding a book. And so I got it and took the label off, copied it, and made it the scribe that you see on the Apostolic Bible website. That was taking somebody's image. Now, where they got it, I don't know. It might have been they took it also from, it looked like it was some type of Italian Renaissance type of a painting. So these are all small things that we do. Cheating. You can cheat on your taxes. You can have, like with me, donations, cash donations. Somebody gives me some money, and I don't report it on my taxes. Or I will buy something for myself, like something for the kitchen, but then write it off as a business expense where it's really not. All these things you can get away with so easily. Don't even think about it. A false scale is mentioned in the Bible by God, by having a scale with different weights. If you're buying something from somebody, the guy that's selling it would make the scale where you're not getting as much as you think. Or if you're selling something, then you wouldn't get as much as it's worth by these different false weights. The tax collectors in the Bible were mentioned by Jesus because they would see people maybe having a donkey with, let's say it was 100 pounds on its back, and they'd have to pay a tax, the person that owned the donkey. And so when they went by the tax collector's station, the tax collectors say, well, it's 125 pounds, and they'd have to pay the extra 25, and the tax collector would pocket it. And also mentioned by Jesus were soldiers who forced people to go someplace and carry their luggage. Sports. You see things in sports, fixing a fight or fixing a game of some sort by gambling the money and you losing on purpose so you would win the bet. Or like in fighting, you could put a weight in the glove and make your hand much, much heavier than it normally is. All sorts of little things. It could be an employer, and you cheat the person's in wages. You don't give him what he's supposed to get. Or you can overcharge for something that you shouldn't be overcharging for. And as a businessman, again, then taking credit for something, like authorship of a certain article, and say that you wrote it. Politics do that a lot in politics. Politicians are taking other people's speeches. The president's wife recently took a speech from another president's wife, not knowing that it was, whether it was on purpose or not, but used it for herself. And then there's like stolen valor, where a man that's not, maybe he's in the army, a desk job, but yet he says that he's in war overseas and he was in combat and he's got badges and so forth. That's called stolen armor. And lying to get something, that's exactly what Ananias did here. It's a lie. He told these men that was everything that he sold. Selfishness, another small one. You could be not tipping or paying somebody as much as they should be getting, or ignoring the poor and the needy, somebody that needs help. Basically, when we look at this, you want to go along with the saying, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But if one person added up all the things, the little things you did in your life through the whole, like my 85 years, all the little things I did to take money and steal, and I put them all together, I would never be able to pay them back. The only help and alleviation for that is the forgiveness of sins. These are all sins. There are other sins that are like murder and theft, big sins, mortal sins, they call them. Adultery. Yes, those are obvious, but all these small ones, God is looking down on what we are doing. And so is Satan. Satan, it said here, Peter asked him, why did Satan put this in your heart? Jesus was tempted by this Satanas in Matthew 4:7. And Peter was called Satan by Jesus, and when Satan was actually entered into Peter, it says, Satan takes away the word being sown in Mark 4:15. And in Luke 10:18 it says, and he said to them, Jesus said, I viewed Satan as lightning falling from out of the heaven. And then in Luke 13:16, Satan had bound a woman with the flow of blood that Jesus healed. It says Satan entered Judas, Luke 22:3. And Satan wanted Peter, Jesus says in Luke 22:31. So Satan is there trying to destroy us by all the nefarious thoughts that he can come and put into our psyche. But we fall into it many times. Our enemies in this life, I believe, are the Satan, the world, all the things of the world that drags us away from God, and the flesh. The desires of the flesh are on their own, and they drag us away from God. And lying to God is easy to do. You can lie and think that and you may even know that he knows, but you still do it because it's the easy thing to do. And you do it because you think, well, everybody does it. I'm not going to get caught. You can rationalize it however you rationalize it. Everybody's got a different way of rationalizing why he has done these things. But they all show an unbelief that we really don't have a fear of God. We think we can do this and no big deal. So I believe this is why we have the story of Ananias and Sapphira, where this man lied, something you would say, well, no big thing. He's just lying, and he still gave half of his money to the church or so. But then he was put to death. He died. And then it goes into a little bit more. So the not having fear of God is a very dangerous thing, and God wants to show us the fear is something we should have. In Matthew 10:28, Jesus says, but you fear rather the one being able both soul and body to destroy in Gehenna. All right, that's Hades. Gehenna is more of a Hebrew term for it. In Revelation 14:7, it says, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment came. So we are going to be judged, and all these things that we did, God can bring them all out. But thank you for Jesus that he has brought us forgiveness of sins. It says in Revelation 19:5, praise our God, all his bondmen, and the ones fearing him, the small and the great. So we need to fear God. God knows everything. It shows how serious God is in our actions. He looks at everything that we do, if it's what he wants or if it's against what he wants. God can decide to bless or curse our actions. God can send us again to Hades. And the sin's ultimate conclusion, and when we stand in front of the judgment, is guilty. We're all guilty of all sorts of sins. And if it wasn't for Jesus coming for us believers, we would be going into a place we would not want to go and maybe never get out of. But with Jesus, we do have the forgiveness of sins. And now we'll continue in verse 6. Anastantes they, and having risen up, Neotori, Sinestilon, Afton, the younger men wrapped him, Ke Exenencates, and having brought him forth, Ethopson, they entombed him. So it's kind of, to me, it's like, well, somebody just dies like that. Today, you'd have the police there and checking out, well, did somebody kill him there or what? But here in this story, it's kind of like, doesn't fit modern day. It wouldn't happen like this. And so I've always seen this story, and it's like, well, the first thing is, being killed or put to death because of these small things was, well, wow, that could be me. And then why would these people just go out and bury somebody like they could do that? They can't do that today. In verse 7, Ageneto they os oron trion theastima, and it came to pass about 3 hours interval, ke igini aftu and his wife, me ethia to gegonos, not having known what happened, Isilthan entered. Well, you'd think if you're looking for her husband, but in verse 8, Apokrithi they afti responded to her Petros, Peter, Ipe me I tosutu to horion apethos they. Tell me if you rendered so much for the place. Well, she knows that the husband didn't. Either ipen, nay, yes. Nay would think would be no, but nay in Greek is yes. Tosuto, for so much. O they Petros, ipen prosavtin. Then Peter said to her, Ti oti synephonisi imin. Pirase to pneuma kyriou. Why is it that you joined in one accord to test the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God, this invisible force that God sees everything, knows everything, and here he's saying, well, if you don't do these right things, then you're testing God. And he says, Idu, ipodhes ton thapsanton ton andrasu epitithira ke exisusi se. Behold, the feet of the ones having buried your husband are at the door, and they will bring you forth. Wow. Here, just because they didn't say the right amount. So you look at this and it's like, wow, if that happened to me, can't imagine, because I've done a lot of things maybe worse as far as these petty things than Ananias and Sapphira did. And maybe you. 5:10, it says, Epise they parakrima paratus podas avtu. Then she fell immediately by his feet. Ke exipsiken, and expired. Iselthontes they inianiski evron aftin necron, and the young men having entered found her dead. Ke exenencates ethopson proston andra aftis, and having brought her forth, they entombed her by her husband. Well, that's, to me, it's an unusual, odd story that two people could die like that, and yet nothing happens unless it did happen and we're not told. In verse 11, K, ageneto phobos megas olin tin ecclesian, and there became great fear upon the entire assembly. So people are now fearing God to see what happens. Today we don't have the things like this happening, but God does see, and he feels this way enough that he could put somebody to death. Maybe he does, and I don't know about it. But I think of fearing God. God has made us. He has created humans. He has created us, created animals. Well, look what happens to the animals. They're eating each other, killing each other. Horrible things you see on TV and to the animal world. And yet, the same thing is happening in the human world. There's wars, people treating other people terribly, but God allows all that to happen. People that have terrible diseases and suffering, and you think, well, if to be fair, if I died and I loved Jesus, I wouldn't have to suffer. Well, that may be, but if you're not walking in the way that God wants you to walk, or wants me to walk, we're in sin, then we're on a dangerous place. And a dangerous place it's because we could end up being separated from God and being in Hades, in Hades, and forever. And God will do that. He will do that. He doesn't sit there and, listen to your whining or my whining and complaining like I used to do with my parents to try to get my way. I knew how to manipulate my parents. If I would, as a kid, if I didn't get something, then I'd yell or scream or do something here and here, whatever, and to manipulate them. Well, we might like to think we can manipulate God, but we can't. We're not going to do that. God knows, and He sees everything we do, and sin is condemned to be a person that's sinning and condemned to go to Hades. God will send them there. It's not going to feel, bad about doing it, like a judge that may, here's somebody doing something, and the person really didn't want to do that, but yet he did do it, and so, but no, God, it's like if you did do it, then you did do it. If you didn't, you didn't. And so, therefore, God is capable of doing something, and what that could be something that would be horrible, and we need to fear God, not do them because of the fear of God. Now, God does love. He has other attributes, but fearing God is one thing I believe that we should have, and it's something that's good to fear God, see what is going to happen if we are doing these things. A lot of the things I mentioned I have done, or all of them probably I have done. Guilty as charged, and thank you, Jesus. In verse 12, Διάδε των χειρών των Αποστόλων εγίνετο σημεία και τέρατα εν το λαό. And by the hands of the apostles there took place signs and miracles among the people. Πολλά, many. Και ήσαν ομοθυμαδόν άπαντες εν τη στοά Solomontos, and they were with one accord all together in the Stoa of Solomon. They're all going back into the temple, to where in the last video I showed what a stoa looks like, a column porch, and holding up a roof. But they were in one accord. And in 13 it says, Ton de lipon udis etoma kolaste aftis. But the rest, no one dared join them. Now, who are the rest? Well, I'm not really sure. Like people that didn't want to be with them or feared. It doesn't really say. It's interesting, but the rest. But there's somebody else that didn't dare join them for whatever reason. Al emegalinen aftus o leos. But the people magnified them. So a lot of people went along with the things that the apostles were doing. It says in 14, Malon they prosethento pistevontes to Kyrio, and more were added believing in the Lord. So now thousands are coming. Plethi andron te ke ginekon, multitudes of men and also women. Oste katatas platies ek ferin tu asthenes ke tithene epi klinon ke kravaton, so as in the squares to bring forth the weak, asthenia, the weak, and to put them upon beds and litters. Ina erchomenu petru ke iskia episkiasi tini afton, that at the coming of Peter, even the shadow should overshadow some of them, and they would be healed, apparently. In verse 16, Sinir kato they ke toplithos ton perix poleon is Jerusalem, and came together also the multitudes of all the cities all around into Jerusalem. So now they're becoming famous. People are coming from all over. What? Pharontes asthenes, bringing the weak. Ke oklumenus ipo pneumaton akatharton, and ones being mobbed by unclean spirits. Itines etherapevonto apantes, ones who were cured all together. So everything is going good. The apostles are being seen by the people, things that they're saying. People are joining with them in the many multitudes of people, it says. But then the rulers in charge, the temple in Jerusalem, the country of Israel, are seeing what's happening here. They're losing a power to the ones that feel that way, and they're going to do something now about it. That's in the next section, where the apostles are imprisoned.